All right, here we go. Parade of Horribles continues. In this case, it's real. So, Mitch McConnell proposing an amendment to the Patriot Act, which would make it, believe it or not, substantially worse. So, it is in relation to web browsing and web history of all Americans. He is trying to give them access to it. It has two parts. One is terrible, the other one is unspeakable. So, let's go to the terrible one first. As Sean Vitka explains, he's senior policy counsel with activist group Demand Progress. They care about civil liberties. He said McConnell is literally trying to take a privacy safeguard designed for the press and religious groups and instead give it to only politicians and people suspected of being foreign agents. Okay, there's a reason why the press and religious groups have more protections in America, because it's in our Constitution. It's in the First Amendment, freedom of the press, freedom of religion. Now, what McConnell's trying to do, he's the leader of the Republicans in the Senate, is give extra protections to politicians, because poor politicians, they just need more protection. This is obviously to protect Donald Trump and his criminal gang, but that's bad. The foreign agents. So now we need to give the most protection to foreign agents in this country? I mean, they do this with a straight face. And there's so many horrible things that Donald Trump is doing when we're in the middle of a pandemic. So they could just propose these things that are so outrageous and it barely registers. So Mitch McConnell, they call him Moscow Mitch. I don't know what his situation is in regards to Russia or not. I don't know if he's just looking out for his handler, Donald Trump. If he's got a connection to any other country, I don't know. But I do know this is now a number of times, and this one among the most egregious, where he is saying we've got to protect foreign agents. And I don't want our government bothering foreign agents working inside America. Amazing, amazing. You could make the case that foreign agents should have the least protections, not the most protections in America. So that's the terrible part. The second part is way worse. So, as Daily Beast explains here, Section 215 of the 2001 Patriot Act mandates records providers turn over, quote, tangible things, quote, relevant to an ongoing investigation. Okay, so that already exists, kind of. I'll get back to what's happening with the Patriot Act at the end and the role of the Democrats at the end. So that already exists. Tangible things and relevant things you must turn over. Now, McConnell's amendment would extend to web browsing and search history records. So here we go. They can do all of this. Now, here comes the worst part, without a warrant. McConnell's amendment can be, quote, read that some type of collection on internet records is appropriate and leaves it up to the leadership at the Justice Department. And you see how wise and fair that they have been. So I need to pause here to explain to folks how things normally work. So, look, if the authorities think that you're in the middle of they're in an investigation to see if you have committed a murder, and they have reasonable doubt, and they have probable cause, probable cause, and they've arrested you, and they're doing an actual investigation following the law and the Constitution, can they ask for a warrant to search for things like your browsing history? Of course they can, right? Because they're saying, hey, look, we think maybe he killed his wife, and we need to look into his browsing history to see if he looked up how to poison someone with a donut. Oh, look, he did, and that's how she was poisoned. Okay, very relevant evidence. It makes sense, okay? This is not that. This is the Justice Department can look into any American's web history, browsing, etc., without a warrant. So there's not necessarily an investigation, or they launch an investigation for a reason they do not have to justify in open court or to anyone else. I didn't like you. He insulted Donald Trump. Donald Trump is our dear leader. And obviously if he insults Donald Trump, I was going to say he must be a foreign agent. On the other hand, then he would have more protections. No, he must be an enemy of the state. By the way, could they do that to journalists? Absolutely. And could they do that to any person that opposes the government? Yes. By the way, I hope Donald Trump's not going to be president forever. If this passes and there's a Democrat that's president, Well, right wing, congratulations. You still allowed that Democrat to investigate anybody in the country that they oppose. So this is not passed yet. And there are good Republicans opposed to it. So Steve Daines from Montana is working with Ron Wyden, who cares. Probably the leading advocate for civil liberties in the country is Ron Wyden, senator from Oregon. But he is working with a Republican ally there. Mike Lee cares about civil liberties. Very right wing, insane, absurd on Green New Deal, but good on civil rights. So in civil rights, as in civil liberties and protection of our privacy. So there are Republicans on the right side here. Unfortunately, their leader, McConnell, is leading the charge in terms of the people heading in a disastrous direction. Again, Daily Beast explains this will expressly permit the FBI to warrantlessly collect records on Americans' web browsing and search histories. And now Senator Ron Wyden explains, under the McConnell amendment, Barr, the Attorney General in this case, gets to look through the web browsing history of any American, including journalists, politicians, and political rivals, without a warrant, just by saying it is relevant to an investigation. So that is the current proposal by Mitch McConnell. Apparently, most of the Republicans back it. Most of the Democrats oppose it. But this is not clear-cut Republicans versus Democrats as much. It's clear-cut enough that the Republicans are proposing it and their leader is the champion of it. But there are a couple of Republicans on the right side. And yes, there are more Democrats on the right side. But are Democrats great on this issue? Nope. First of all, we've had the Patriot Act since 2001. Democrats have held the government for a long, long time. They didn't get rid of the Patriot Act. They didn't put in more protections for privacy. They had all the time in the world to do that. They had a supermajority under Obama, and they chose not to do it. So individual Democrats like Ron Wyden, Pat Leahy are very good on this. Democratic leadership, as usual, a terrible record on everything, including this. In fact, currently, the Patriot Act is not reauthorized. It ran out last month, okay? Because it's set to expire after a while, and you have to reauthorize. And of course, Nancy Pelosi jumped on reauthorizing it with even worse, not worse provisions than McConnell's. McConnell's the worst, the things that I just explained to you. But with provisions that civil libertarians, quote, hated, according to the Daily Beast, okay? So, and it's not just according to them, you can go read up to quotes of anyone working on civil liberties. So the House version, led by Nancy Pelosi and Democratic leadership, was already terrible. And they couldn't wait to reauthorize it. Donald Trump, he's a gift wrap for you. And McConnell came in and said, not good enough. As always, Republicans with infinite greed. So he's like, nope, I want to be able to investigate you guys. I want to be able to investigate anybody running against me, running against Donald Trump, anyone who is a reporter that doesn't write nice things about me. You know what? Maybe you said something on social media, and I want to send a message. I want to tell people, hey, you better not write anything on Twitter either. And you better not write any comments on YouTube or Facebook or anything like that, because all they got to do is investigate, 1, 2, 10 people without a warrant, ruin their lives. And by the way, you know how that works. The minute they get your browsing history, you think anybody's going to back you up? They're going to say, oh my God, look at what Jim Jablowski was looking at. And everybody's going to say, oh, Jim Jablowski's a terrible person. I can't believe he was looking at that. I can't believe he was looking at that. Well, how about Bob? Bob's also a terrible person. I can't believe he was looking at X instead of Y. Oh my God. And nobody's going to defend you. Nobody's going to defend you. You think the Democrats are going to defend you? They're not going to defend you. And in fact, anyone who defends you, once they find out what your browsing history is, then they're going to get smeared. They're going to get tarred and feathered. They're going to get taken out. And this is how authoritarian states take over. They don't need to look into all of your browsing histories. They don't need to arrest all of you. All they got to do is set enough of an example that it scares the living crap out of everybody. Then you know, do not oppose Mitch McConnell. Don't you dare write anything on Facebook opposed to Mitch McConnell or Donald Trump or any other Republican, because they'll put you in jail. Now, don't forget the jail. They'll expose anything that you think you're doing privately on the internet, and then you'll be open to ridicule, shame, etc. Now, for those of you who say, oh my God, yeah, well, if you're not guilty, so what? If you're not, okay, sure, buddy, right? So you think that none of you look at things on the internet that couldn't be perceived as problematic publicly, there's not a single guy in the country that believes that. Not a single one. And anyone who tells you otherwise, who's a guy, is a total and utter liar. And you all know it. Okay, so yeah, okay, here, I can prove it. If you're a guy commenting right now, if you say this is a good idea, how about we take that as express permission for us to hack into your computer and find out what your browsing history is? I mean, you say you're in favor of it. Like, I'm not saying anybody actually said that, right? I haven't read through the comments yet. I'm making a hypothetical argument. But if you say, hey, it's a wonderful idea. I mean, if you didn't do anything wrong, if everything you looked at on the internet is perfect, then you shouldn't have a problem with it, right? Like the Trump's Ukrainian call was perfect. So then we look at all your web browsing history and we publish it. You want to do that? Nobody wants to do that. Nobody. This is America. We're supposed to have privacy. We're supposed to have freedom. We're supposed to have a constitution. But McConnell doesn't care about any of that. So if he gets his way, your privacy is shredded, man. And then you live under a police state, big brother that's looking over your shoulder at every single moment. That is warrantless surveillance of everything you do on the internet. Look, guys, it's both a telling of McConnell and the Republican Party, again, with the exceptions that I noted. But we're also going to find out what the Democrats are about. So I'm glad Wyden and the others are opposing it now. But this is real legislation, and almost no one's paying attention. So if the Democrats say yes to this, look, the media is hopeless anyway. I mean, if the Democrats say yes to this, they're maybe worse than the Republicans because they're the Vichy government. They're complicit. They're paid to lose. And they're the loyal opposition, right? Oh, golly gee, there was nothing we could do. We just let everybody get investigated that opposed any politician or any corporation that donates to us. I don't know how that happened, right? So, but now they haven't done it yet. So this is the great news. Democrats, this is a rare case where you don't have to do anything. The Patriot Act is expired. So don't reauthorize it. Okay, you say, oh, it's super important to protect the security. Nonsense. It's all total BS. We didn't have the Patriot Act before. You don't need the Patriot Act now. It's always been a lie to do more surveillance on Americans. You don't need it at all. But if you say, oh, no, there are really important provisions that we need to protect for our security in the Patriot Act, okay, great, take out those provisions and pass a clean bill. You control the House, Democrats. You don't have to be cowards. You don't have to be impotent. You could actually say, hey, these are the parts I like. These are the parts I don't like. That's what I'm going to pass in the House. And if you don't like it, we don't have a Patriot Act. We don't have to agree. There's nothing forcing us to agree right now. So there are no excuses for the Democrats. All the Democrats and Nancy Pelosi and Steny Hoyer have to do in the House is nothing. Can you manage that? Is that too much to ask, Nancy Pelosi and Steny Hoyer? That you just do the bare minimum. Just don't do anything. But my guess is, oh my God, but we wanted to work with Mitch McConnell. We believe that the Republicans are so good. Other than Trump, they're also wonderful. And, you know, we want to do bipartisan compromise. And the New York Times, the Washington Post, and NPR will applaud. Yes, bipartisan compromise. And Americans get screwed again. Yes, right? So, but right now, it has not happened yet. So let's see what happens. Democrats, I'm asking you to do the simplest thing in the world, something you're normally really good at, Democratic leadership. Nothing. Okay, do nothing and we'll be okay. If you help McConnell pass this, you're worse than McConnell because you pretend to be on our side and you secretly help the Republicans take away all of our rights. So we'll find out. We already know who the Republican Party is. That's their leader. Okay, now we're going to find out who the Democratic Party is. All right, we're also going to do giant shows for you guys. We got so much programming coming up. We got interviews. We got the main show starting at 6 o'clock Eastern. The interviews started 5:30 p.m. Eastern. We have special election coverage tonight. California 25, the special election, and also Nebraska Cara Eastman one of the strongest progressive left. She has to win our race. It's super important. That coverage is tonight at 9:30 p.m. Eastern. Check out all that. And if you can, support the show. By the way, here, first of all, normally, tyt.com/go, we're doing fundraising. But by the way, you want to protect your privacy. The minute I read this, I was like, thank God I got NordVPN. I'm not kidding. And look, they are a sponsor. I'm upfront about that. But if they weren't a sponsor, I'd get them anyway. So nordvpn.com/tyt. Here, I'll do the plug for it. You get a month off, and you get 70% off of 3 years, basically. So that's what, if you have that, it doesn't look like your computer's, it looks like someone else's computer. So it protects your browsing history anyway. nordvpn.com/tyt. All right, guys. I'll see you actually, you'll see the interviews at 5:30 p.m. Eastern. All right, see you in a minute.